Alright guys, MTech Guy here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the E60 M5 and talking about water ingress issues. Now this applies to any E60, not just specific to the M5. This is a fairly common problem with these cars, probably way more common than the owners would like. Now of course, water getting into places that it shouldn't do with any car is a big problem, because of course you can end up with wet carpets, wet sound deadener underneath the carpets. It can hold that moisture in there. You can get mouldy, which is no good for your health. You get that musty smell inside the car, and then eventually it can cause rust issues also. Now, with a car like the E60, it's an even bigger problem because of course these cars have many electrical modules throughout the car, and then you've got all the wiring harnesses that go along with them. So if you start getting moisture or water inside them contacts, inside them modules, it causes all sorts of problems with these cars. It just wreaks havoc. And also another problem is if you're getting water ingress around the bottom of your windshield there, it can end up coming through your heater vents and then getting inside the cab and, like I say, getting on your carpets. So it's not good. Not good getting water where you shouldn't do with these cars. So in today's video we're going to take a look at where the water gets into the car, where it should be exiting the car, and why it might not be exiting the car, and then what to do about it. And also we'll be covering some preventative maintenance to avoid getting in this situation in the first place. Now then, with the E60 you've got modules underneath the bonnet there in the DME compartment. You've got some in the glove box, and then you've got a few in the boot area also under the trunk. And then with the E60 M5, the battery sits in a lower compartment in a low point where your spare wheel would normally be, so you've got that to worry about also. Okay, so let's take a look where the water enters the car. Now these cars do have a drainage system built into them, so the main points of entry are the middle, up at the sunroof, the front, around the windshield cowl, and then around the boot area there. So let's take a look now. Alright, so let's take a look at the sunroof area first. Now behind the glass panel there's 4 drain points, 1 in each corner, and connected to them drain points is some drain tubes, and they run down the A-pillar to a drain point in the lower portion of the car, and then from the back they run underneath the headliner and down the C-pillar, and then down to a drain point in the wheel well there. And then of course it's the same on the other side of the car. So that's your 4 main drain points from the sunroof area. And it's not unusual to get water past the main sunroof seal here. They do deteriorate and shrink over time, and also this was revised from the later models. So the earlier ones were a little bit gappy, but the later ones they revised it to make it a better seal. But it's normal to get water just past there, and that's why them drain points are there. Okay, so next up we'll take a look at the windshield area. Now of course you're going to have rainwater sheeting down here, and also your windscreen washer fluid spraying up and coming down there, so that water's got to go somewhere. So there's a drainage system built into the cowl area here. It just comes around your cabin air filters there. It's all built in underneath that, and then that gets into the brake booster box there, the reservoir there, and then of course you've got the enclosure there for the DME. It'll be the other way around on a left-hand drive car, and that's where the low point is, so the water will find its way into there. And then there's some drain points just under there with a little drain opening in the front wheel wells, so we'll take a look at them shortly. And then the boot area, of course you've got the same effect here. You're going to have water sheeting down there, and it'll collect just at the top side of your boot area here. And what that'll do, there's a channel that just runs down there, and that'll just guide the water down there, so it's not so much of a big deal, the water ingress here. But of course you want a decent boot seal there. It's not that common that they fail, but it's worth checking out nonetheless. Okay, and another thing worth mentioning, if we take a look in here, if you're finding that you're getting wet carpets along the edges here close to your door jambs, what it could be is your vapor barriers, which is like a foam piece that sits behind your door card there, and it's stuck to the sheet metal of the door around the perimeter with like a butyl tape. And sometimes these can become damaged, especially if someone's been in there doing a window regulator or something like that. If the vapor barrier's gotten torn, or it's not stuck back down correctly with the butyl tape, then what can happen is when you get water down your window there and it'll find its way in the top of the door, it won't just run down and out the drain hole at the bottom. It'll end up coming out between the door and your door card and end up inside the cab. So if you got wet carpets down the edge here, it's worth checking them out too. Now, it is a very good drainage system and it works very well, but what can happen over the years is small dirt and grit and debris can find its way through that system and it'll accumulate in them drain points at the lower portion of the car, and they get blocked and then they get sludgy. You might get leaf debris through there, whatever. It gets sludgy, it gets blocked, and then it doesn't let the water drain out where it's supposed to do and when it's supposed to do, and then that water will back up and end up in places that it shouldn't do, and that's where the problems start. So this can be especially true depending on where you park the car. Now, if you leave it parked in the garage most of the time, it's not really an issue. I've got mine outside here. I've got the carport here, so that keeps most leaves and dirt and debris off it, but there is a bit floating around, and I find when I wash the car I do end up with some small leaves getting around the windows there, around the edges, so it's not uncommon for some debris to find its way through there, but this will be a problem, especially if you're an owner that parks it somewhere in a driveway where you've got a lot of trees and you're getting a lot of leaves and debris and whatnot falling on the car, so that's something to keep in mind. So what we'll do now is we'll work through the car and take a look at what's required to clean the drainage system out, but mainly the main drain points that get blocked throughout the car. Okay, so now what we can do to start off with is just pour a small amount of water into the entry points there and just make sure that it is exiting where it should do through the car, and then if it's not, that'll give you a good indication if you do have a blockage that might be common to where you park the car or not. So we'll start off by pouring a small amount of water in the front corner there, the sunroof drain, and if we come down, follow the door jamb down, you'll see it's exiting just behind the electrical connection there for the door. There's just a small drain point there, so that looks good. And then next up we'll take a look at the rear sunroof drain, so we'll just pour a small amount down here, and then hopefully it'll trickle down through there and come out the rear wheel well. And you can see that we've got a small puddle of water there and it's just dripping through there, so that's coming through there nicely. Okay, so next up we'll take a look at the windshield cowl area, so we'll just pour some water down there now, and we should see it exiting at the rear of the front wheel well. Here we go, it's coming out there nicely. And lastly, we'll take a look at the boot area here, so we'll tip some water down here and we should see it exit just under the rear bumper at the back there. There we go. Alright, so we'll start off with the sunroof drains, and then after that we'll move on to the 4 drain points around the car. So to start off with, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up some soapy water, bit of dishwashing liquid with some nice warm water, and I'm going to pour it down each of these 4 drain tubes just to clear any dirt and debris out of there, just to give them a good flush out, a good maintenance clean if you like. Now if you're finding that when you did the initial test that you weren't getting water exiting where it should do, you've obviously got a blockage in the tube. So if that's the case, what you might want to do is feed something down the tube to clear the blockage. Now you want to use something nice and flexible but hard enough that you're going to be able to push through the blockage. So a lot of people like to use that strimmer wire, you know, that wire that you use on the end of your weed eater. You get it on a reel, you can feed that down there. But if you are going to use that practice, what you want to do is use this soapy water first just to soften up any blockage, any dirt that might be in there. But if you are going to go down that road, you want to be super careful with it, because if the blockage isn't clearing, you don't want to be pushing too hard, because what can happen is the drain tube can become dislodged from its mount, and then what's going to happen is when you get water through here, it's going to collect on the inside of your headliner, and the only way to rectify it is to pull the whole headliner off, pop it back on there, but you might not notice it's happened, so then you're going to get water in your headliner. So unless it's absolutely necessary, I'd try to avoid that practice. And if you are going to feed something down there, just make sure you get that soapy water down there to try and soften it first, and then that's going to give you a better chance of pushing it through. But anyway, let's get some soapy water mixed up and let's get it poured down all 4 of the drain tubes. So you can see we've definitely got more water exiting the right hand side of the car at the rear rather than the left. So I should say that this one's maybe partially blocked, so we'll give that a good clean when we get into it. Okay, so normally these drain tubes in the door jambs here, they don't often present any issues because it's just like an open end, an open tube. So it'll be very unlikely that you need to give that one a clean out. But the ones on the rear, they do act like a non-return valve. So it's like a rubber flapper that won't let the dirt in, but it'll let the water drain out. And what can happen is that flapper can become lodged sometimes or bunged up with dirt. So next job is we'll jack up the rear end of the car, we'll remove the rear wheels, we'll take a look at removing the wheel liner there, and that'll give us access to them drain points. And then what we can do is give them drains a good inspection, a good clean, and then that'll be that sorted. Okay, so I've got the rear of the car up in the air now. We've got it securely sat on axle stands, both rear wheels off, so now we're ready to pull back the wheel liner here. Now if I remember rightly, the drain point's somewhere up the top here, so I think we can get away with just removing this back section and folding it back rather than pulling the whole lot out. Okay, so there's a few bolts to remove that take an 8mm socket. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you've also got a plastic nut to remove here that takes a 10mm socket, and then a wee plastic plug to pop out here. Then once we get that lot removed, we'll pull this back and see if we can find our drain point up here. Okay, so I've got all the fasteners removed now. I've got this back section of the wheel liner pulled forward. So if we take a look up here, you can see the drain point just up there, just that piece there. So what we'll do now is we'll just reach up, and that should just pull out nicely, and then we'll give it a good clean. Okay, so we've got the wee drain point off now. That's what it looks like, and as you can see, if we pull the rubber piece off here, it's reasonably blocked up with muck. So what I'll do now is I've got a container here full of soapy water. We'll give it a good clean out and a good rinse, and then we'll refit it back to the car. There we go, that's much better now. They're nice and clean, got rid of all that dirt, and you can see how this acts as a bit of a non-return valve, so it's closed up and it's facing down to stop any dirt getting up that way. But of course with the water pressure it should open up, but then that just leads to it getting clogged up, so it's worth giving these a good clean out every once in a while. So now we'll piece it back together and then stick it back on the car. There we go, ready to refit. Okay, so that's our drain piece back in position now, all nice and clean. So what we'll do now is we'll refit the wheel liner, and then we'll move over to the other side, get that done, and then we can refit the wheels, drop it back down, and then retorque the wheel bolts. Okay, so here's the one off the right hand side of the car, and as we can see, it's pretty mucky also, so even though that one was draining a bit better than the left hand side, it's still ready for a good clean out, so definitely worth pulling it off and having a look today. One other thing to think about is where this pushes in to the wheel arch, pushes up and in, obviously that's where your drain hose connects to, and as the drain hose comes out, the sheet metal, it's got a bit of a lip there, so it'll just sit there. So just be careful when you push it back into position, you're not pushing that hose off its lip and then back inside the wheel arch, because then you're going to have to start pulling your interior to bits to get the hose back on. So just be careful that that hose is sort of lipped on the outside of the wheel arch, and then that should just hook on nicely. So I'll give that a good clean now. Okay, so they're looking much better now, nice and clean, back to normal. So we'll get them refitted to the car now, and that should avoid any potential water ingress issues and then causing problems with our computers and electrical connectors in the boot area there. Okay, let's get on with it. Alright, so that's all the sunroof drains and the drain points all sorted now. I'm happy with that. So next up, we'll move over to under the hood, under the bonnet, and we'll take a look at that windshield cowl area. Alright, so next up we need to gain access to the two corner bins there. So they live under the cabin filters. So we need to remove all this plastic hardware here first. I've done this quite a few times in previous videos, but we'll just run through the steps quickly now. We'll get all that out of the way and then we'll have a good look down where them entry points are and them two bins either side. Okay, to start off with, we'll remove the weather strip. Just pulls up and out. Okay, so next up we've got the plastic retainer piece that holds the two halves together to remove. So to remove this, there's just a wee clip here. Just lift that up and then slide it to the left-hand side of the car. Out like that. So now we're ready to remove the two cabin air filter lids and the filters themselves. So to do that, there's a metal clip here retaining it on the inner edge. That just pops off like that. And then there's a plastic nut, and to release that, use a 13mm socket and just turn it 90 degrees anti-clockwise. Same on the other side. And on this right hand side of the car, you've also got two electrical connectors to disconnect before we can remove that lid. So now this just lifts up and out. Same with this side. Now we're ready to remove the two halves of the lower pieces. So to do that, it's just more of these 13mm plastic nuts that need turning 90 degrees to remove. So there's one in the middle here. 3 this triangle here. And then same on the other side. And then the last fastener, we've got a screw down here and same on the other side that takes a T30 Torx. So we'll remove that and then we can lift these two halves out. And for some reason, the one on the right hand side on my car is a T25, so there's been a switcheroo that's taken place at some point, but either way, you've got a Torx screw either side to remove. So now we can remove the left-hand panel out first. And then the right. Alright, so now we've got access to our two bins either side of the windshield cowl here. So we'll take a look at the brake booster side first. If yours is a left-hand drive car, it's going to be the opposite way around. We've got the DME that side, brake booster this side. So if we take a look down here, I don't know if the camera will pick it up. Drain point down there, you can just see the top of it. Now, the main thing we're looking for here is if the bottom of this bin is all full of dirt and debris and leaves. If it is, you want to do your best to scrape it out of there, blow it out with some compressed air, whatever. Just make sure all the junk's out the bottom here. And then what we'll do is we'll jack the front end of the car up and we'll remove this drain plug. It's very similar to the one in the rear. We'll give it a good clean and we'll refit it. Now when you have it removed, you might just want to flush this whole bin out with a small amount of water, just to flush it out while there's a nice big open hole there. It's up to you. Mine doesn't look too bad, so I'm going to jack the front end of the car up now and we'll pull that off from underneath, give it a good clean and then refit it, same as we did with the rears. And of course, looking at the DME side, there's no chance of being able to even see the plug, let alone get your hands down there and give it a clean and whatnot. So the best thing to do here is, like I say, blow it out with some compressed air if you can. Just have a good look down there, see if you can see any junk. And then once you have that rubber drain point removed, once the car's jacked up, it might be worth just flushing a small amount of water through there just to flush it through that open hole again. But have a good look, just take the best look as you can and see what's down there and remove it as best you can. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is refit all the windshield cowl pieces there, and then I'm going to get the front end of the car jacked up and then we'll take a look at them two drain points. Okay, so the front's the same deal as the rear. Get it up in the air, get it securely sat on axle stands, wheels off, and now we've got access to our inner wheel well here. So what we'll do now is we'll look at folding this rear section out the way again to get access to that rubber drain point. So looking at this, we've got another screw here that takes an 8mm socket, one up here, and then you've got 5 underneath this inside edge there from underneath, and then you can see we've got 3 plastic clips right on the lip of the wheel arch there. Now I want to try and avoid messing with these plastic pieces, so I think what we might get away with is just undoing these ones. There's also usually one up the top there, but mine's missing, and we should have just enough flex to grab it there and pull it back, and then just be able to reach up there and grab what we want. So we'll see how we go. Okay, I managed to get on okay with this side, got the bolts removed, managed to get away with not disrupting these plastic clips here. So if we just fold this back here, you can see just up here, there's the drain point there. Now it's not removable like the rear ones, but this was stuffed up with a few leaves and whatnot, so I was able to get my hand up there, clear it out. It is quite an open space, and then I poured some fresh water from the top there, and that's just flushed it out nicely. It's draining off perfectly now. So we'll put the wheel liner back to normal, and then we'll go and check the driver's side. Right then, I've got the right hand side all sorted now, got it all pieced back together. This one wasn't too bad either, managed to get my hand up there, just pull a few leaves and stuff out, but it wasn't too blocked up. Now these front drain points do have that one-way flapper a bit further up, so I managed to get my hand up there, give it a good clean out. It wasn't too bad, but if yours is really mucky, real bunged up, you can remove them, give them a good clean in some soapy water like I did the rears, and then refit them, but it wasn't necessary on my car. They weren't too bad. Like I say, I managed to get my fingers in there and just give it a good clean out, so it's all good to go now. Alright, so we're ready to refit the front wheels, drop it back down on its wheels, we'll re-torque them wheel bolts there, and then that's the front all sorted. Now when it comes to the rear drain points, like I say, they're hidden behind the rear bumpers here. They are an open tube, they haven't got that one-way check valve set up like the other ones we've cleaned out today. Now I'm not going to go to the trouble of removing my bumper and checking them out today, because I'm happy with the way they're draining. They don't look like they need a good clean, so I'm happy. But if you are wanting to give yours a clean out, I do have a previous video which I'll link at the top here on how to remove and refit the rear bumper, so you can get on with that if you really want to. And of course it's worth opening the boot lid and just giving the channel up the top here a good clean on both sides. Alright guys, so there we have it. That's what's required to maintain your drainage system on your E60 M5, or for any E60 for that matter. So I hope this video helps some of you guys out, especially if you're experiencing water ingress. So now that you'll have them drainage points all cleaned out, you should have good flowing water, no more ingress problems. And also, even if you're not experiencing this problem, it's a worthwhile exercise just to go through it and get it done as preventative maintenance. So you want to keep them clean before they do get fully blocked, them drain points, and before that water starts backing up. So it's just a good job to get done to maintain the whole system. If you did find the video useful, don't forget to give it a like, and make sure you check out the rest of my YouTube channel for more BMW content. I'm MTech Guy, thanks a lot for watching.